All right, we're back here in the Foxhole, and we have our guest Spencer with us from the Military Money Manual. He just actually rappelled in from a helicopter. It's actually the first time that we've ever had that happen. So, Spencer, welcome to the Foxhole.
It's much cozier and warm in here than I expected. I thought it was going to be kind of cold and damp, but no, it's kind of like a hobbit hole. It's quite cozy.
Once you retire, you try to do things nice, make it a little bit nicer for yourself.
Yeah. Spruce it up a bit.
That's it. So we have to ask you, just like we ask every guest, have you ever been in a foxhole before?
I was thinking about that as we were coming into the intro, being a proud member of the chair force or a veteran of the chair force. No, I don't think I've ever been in a foxhole. I guess the closest I would have been is a bunker in, Afghanistan and Iraq during some mortars coming in. But no, never been in an actual foxhole, probably. I don't know, maybe we did training, like when we went to Air Force, summer training, we would have dug one, but would have wasted talent for an Air Force pilot.
That's the same thing Lacey told us. She said, I think maybe in training, we had some tractors come in and dig one out for us or something, but
yeah,
right.
Yeah. Well, while I was at the DFAC, a couple of Marines came in and dug one for me, and then I said, thanks, fellas, and gave them a coin, and then hopped in. So
that's it. Well, I was thinking that you probably also had a coffee shop in the bunker that you were in Afghanistan. So
that's true. That's true. There was a Dunkin' on one end and a Starbucks on the other. Yeah.
We do have an added question for you because Rob and I have both been moonlighting on the Military Money Manual. So now we have another question for you. Which one of us did you like better?
Yeah, no pressure. No pressure.
No pressure. Omen, your episode was really fun because I was in Japan when we were recording it, and I was in kind of like a communal space. So if you listen to the episode, I'm like on my AirPods and I'm like whispering the whole time because I'm in this like communal space in the hotel I was staying at. So that was a lot of fun, and I have this very dusky, low voice as I'm trying not to wake up. I can't remember what time it was, but I think it was quite early in the morning. And then Rob, your episode. So Omen, I'll say yours was really fun because I was in Japan. But Rob, for your episode, my dad actually emailed me and said, "Great episode. Really enjoyed listening to you and Rob talk about Roth conversion." So, Omen, I'm going to say my dad did not email me about our episode.
Disappointing.
So, yeah, I know. But we'll see what he says after this episode. Maybe he'll say, actually, I'm going to go back and listen to the Omen episode. So, it's probably because Jamie was on that episode that he was like, yeah, not that good.
Well, Spencer, I appreciate you being on the show today.
I do have to ask. Yeah. Hold on. I have to. Is your dad okay? Is he okay? You need to check on him. Like if he thought Roth conversion ladders was really interesting, then yeah, I'm concerned about him.
He watches like he's deep down the rabbit hole of tax YouTube. If we want to hold an intervention for him, maybe we should have him in the Foxhole one day and we could say, hey, once you've kind of figured the thing out, like just move on with your life and stop trying to optimize the tax question.
Spencer, for the three people that don't know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do now?
Sure. So I went through Air Force ROTC, Boston University, commissioned and went off to pilot training where I was eventually selected to fly the C-17, big cargo aircraft in the Air Force. Ended up flying that for 10 of my 12 years of active duty. 2 years was spent in training. It was awesome. It was the best job a 20-year-old can have, 25-year-old can have, and possibly the worst job a 35-year-old can have because it really does take a toll on your body. I did my full 10-year pilot training commitment, and then I punched at 12 years, which is actually a really interesting place to be, right? Because I didn't earn the 20-year military pension. I did pick up a little bit of VA disability compensation due to some injuries and stuff that I picked up while I was on active duty. So I can speak intelligently, or as intelligently as I can, about the VA disability compensation process. And while I was on active duty, I started a website called the Military Money or just militarymoneymanual.com, because I was hearing all these investing ideas, all these money management things. One of my favorite stories was in pilot training. I had a friend tell me that he took out a loan to boost his credit score. So like he had a credit card, but then he also went and got an auto loan that he didn't need because he wanted to boost his credit score. And that was something I had never been exposed to before. And it just sounded crazy to me. And so I just wanted to have a place where I can kind of write about these crazy ideas that I was hearing from my peers, my colleagues. And being in the military, you do get exposed to people from all walks of life, right? From different places around America. Sometimes they weren't even born in America, right? Like the military is a path to citizenship. On the enlisted side and on the officer side, there's a big part of the immigrant community to the United States that, feels this call to serve their adopted homeland. You do get exposed to all these different people and all these different money scripts and money stories and all these crazy investing ideas. And in fact, there was a Wall Street Journal article recently about the unique investing culture of the military. I did find that when I was on active duty that, when I was flying on these missions back and forth from Afghanistan to Kyrgyzstan, moving troops around during, that must have been like 2013, 2014, I think that was just after the surge into Afghanistan. And, some of the pilots, the captains I would be flying with would be talking about how they were buying 7-Elevens or gas stations, or they were selling covered calls, or have you heard about this thing called cryptocurrency called Bitcoin? And it was like $800 at the time. And there's always a little bit of FOMO of like, well, you could have just put in $1,000, man. Like, would that really have cost you anything? And I didn't, of course, because I thought, and I still do to this day, that cryptocurrency is a complete scam and Ponzi scheme. I'm very adamant in my anti-crypto stance. But so I started this website to document kind of the stories I was hearing and how I was approaching, investing in the military. Doug Nordman's book, The Military Guide to Early Retirement, Financial Independence, I think it came out in like 2011, 2012. So it was just after I commissioned in 2010. And I don't think I read it until a little bit later. Ryan Ganaw had the military wallet. So there was a couple of people in the online space that were talking about military money. But I just wanted to have a place to say, look, I didn't understand the TSP for the first 2 years. I contributed nothing to it. And this was before the blended retirement system, so you weren't forced to contribute to it. And I knew what a Roth IRA was, so I was throwing money into my Roth IRA. But I didn't understand that a TSP was just a military version of a 401k. And I didn't really understand the tax advantages of a 401k. And there wasn't a Roth option at the time I came in either. So once I realized that there was a Roth option, once I realized that when I was deployed, which was very frequent during 2012 to 2016, 17, I realized that, oh my gosh, there's this triple tax benefit. And like nobody was talking about this. Or if they were, it was just kind of maybe on some like forum buried in the depths of the internet. So anyways, I started the website. Eventually it turned into a book when I took my most popular articles and kind of rolled it into a book. And really it was the book, it's a letter to my younger self. If I could time travel to Lieutenant Spencer, who just commissioned, I would hand him this book and say, this is it. This is the blueprint. This is the manual. Follow this and you'll be a millionaire in 10 to 12 years. And it worked, right? And it still works to this day. I have people who contact me and said, I've been reading your stuff for 10 years now, and I've got a 6-figure, 7-figure net worth, and it works. So, and there's nothing cosmic to it, right? It's just bogleheads, simple, low-cost, automated, diversified, simple investing. And then we started a podcast, my buddy Jamie and I, to promote the book, but we were having so much fun doing it, we just kept rolling with it. And now, that kind of takes us to today. So I left active duty in 2022, and I've been a vet now for 4 years.
Well, I mean, your expertise already in this area shows, and we want to dive into something a little bit more niche, I think, in this particular episode, if that's okay with you. Yeah. You already alluded to the fact that even during our interview, you were in Japan. In fact, I think you were actually late to that podcast episode because you were doing like samurai sword training or something like
yes,
that. I was like,
right. Yeah.
What? Who does this?
On a high rise, like on the helicopter landing pad of a skyscraper in downtown Tokyo. It was looking over the Imperial Palace with the Tokyo Skytree in the distance, and Fuji. You couldn't see Mount Fuji, which was really annoying. It was behind a building, but it was definitely one of those like, what am I doing kind of moments. It was really cool.
I mean, I was asking that same question.
I have to ask, at the end of your training at the top of that building, did you get a moment as the sun was setting to look over the city like Batman? Like to look over the city? I mean, to me, that's like you have to do that if you're doing samurai training.
There's a photo. So my wife was with me as well. And there's a photo of us like in the samurai pose with like our sword tips like pointing towards each other. And I didn't realize what the photographer was doing, but she had positioned us so that the Tokyo Skytree was like directly in between us, and it's like perfectly balanced. I mean, we basically like look like a artistic representation of Fuji. I mean, it is definitely one of those like ultimate Japanese experiences. And so if you're if you're stationed in Japan and you're listening to this podcast, go check it out. There's a couple companies that do it, but they'll take you on the roof of a high rise in Tokyo and train you for an hour in some Japanese sword techniques.
Yeah. So that's pretty amazing. I don't think you mentioned that you're in New Zealand right now, right?
That's right. Yeah, I didn't mention that. Sorry. Yeah, so after I flew the C-17 for, like I was saying, for my entire Air Force career, I was lucky in that I pulled off 4 operational assignments. So I was at McCord, McGuire, and then I went out to the United Arab Emirates. I flew with the Emiratis for 2 years, which was fascinating, under the auspices of the U.S. Embassy out there. So that was interesting in its own respect. And then that was considered a hardship tour. It wasn't. We had a pool. So it was assignment of choice afterwards. And I elected, of course, to go to Hawaii, where we finished my career at Hickam, or Joint Base, Pearl Harbor Hickam. And yeah, we ended up living there till 2022. My wife is a Kiwi, a New Zealander. And so after my commitment was done, we moved to New Zealand to be closer to her family. And so now I've been in New Zealand. I've been outside the United States as a veteran for over 4 years now.
I think that kind of expertise is going to bring an amazing vantage point to this conversation. You already mentioned about the fact that you are a disabled veteran, like you were rated. And so the context that Rob and I often talk about using veteran benefits, retiree benefits, is in the context of people that stay in the US. But for this conversation, you have a lot of experience traveling around. In fact, I was actually listening to your podcast this morning about travel points and everything that you can do for traveling for free. And you mentioned on there that you actually have gotten tired of traveling. You have traveled so much.
Yes,
so
that's true.
can we start there and maybe just big picture, give us an idea, give our listeners an idea of what are the kind of benefits that veterans might still have access to? Not necessarily credit card, but just using like disability and things like that when traveling abroad.
Yeah. So, I mean, the simplest thing is if you are rated by the Veterans Administration and you have a service-connected disability and you have a rating, you will receive your compensation payment like wherever you are in the world. Like we have internet banking now. I just have mine still going into my USAA account. And when I need to access that money locally, I either spend through my US credit cards and just pay it off with my US bank account. If I have a card that has no foreign transaction fees, it doesn't matter. Sometimes a local economy might have like a surcharge on credit card charges, but 1 or 2%, if you calculate that over your entire lifetime, it's like, okay, if your entire lifestyle costs 1 or 2% more over 40 or 50 years, are you really going to notice that? So I think that's the simplest one that you have access to is if you don't have a US bank account anymore, you can set up direct deposit into a foreign bank account. That's something that a lot of veterans, who are living in Germany or Japan or the United Kingdom or the Philippines or South Korea, you could just set up as soon as you're eligible to set up a local bank account, you can set that up and the VA can send it there. I have run into situations where, and this is a more recent change, where the VA they couldn't do that, right? And so they were still sending checks to people. And so I actually ran into a woman in New Zealand whose husband, how did this work? So her husband was an American service member and he had died and she was still receiving maybe SBP or something. I'm not entirely sure, but she had a whole bunch of checks from the U.S. Treasury but in New Zealand, you can no longer cash checks. Like they stopped using checks 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And so what I was able to do was just through my USAA app, she signed it over to me. I deposited into my USAA account and then I just sent her money. And then at the current exchange rate of that day, I just sent her money from my New Zealand bank account. In New Zealand, there's no Venmo, there's no PayPal. Everything's just bank-to-bank transfers. They moved to an electronic banking system back in like the 80s. And so everybody just freely, like if you ask somebody, what's your bank account number? They probably don't know it off the top of their head, but they'll just give it to you because it's a very normal thing to do here. And that's how people accept payment and there's no fee for it. So that's just one of the small examples of like a benefit that you can still receive. I talked to another veteran, American veteran in New Zealand, who was rated 100% permanent in total. and he just has the money from the VA deposited into a Wise account. The Wise app is my favorite currency conversion tool. It's so simple. It's so easy. And they charge you the midpoint of the exchange rate, and then they tack their own fee on top of it. But if you look at like how much that fee is compared to if you went through a bank or you went through any other kind of currency conversion tool, you're saving so much money by using the Wise app. And the other thing they allow you to do too is they allow you to open up local bank accounts through the app. So you could have a US bank account on the Wise app and a New Zealand bank account on the Wise app. And then you can just move money back and forth between them instantaneously. So what this guy is doing on the 100% permanent total side is he doesn't have a US bank account anymore, but he just went into Wise, opened up a US bank account, gets his VA compensation payment paid into that account, and then he just instantly transfers it to his New Zealand account, and then it moves into his like real brick and mortar New Zealand account.
I had to tell you, we lived in England for 3 years, and every payday we went to the bank, HSBC, and we sat we pulled out money in American dollars and literally just scoot like 3 steps next door to the other ATM and deposited it in pounds.
Yep.
It was just ridiculous. Yeah,
that's
that
actually
app would have been amazing.
That's what he's been doing for years is he was withdrawing money from an ATM in New Zealand dollars with a USAA, like no foreign transaction fees ATM card, but he was capped at a $600 daily limit. So he would just go every day to the ATM and pull out $600 at a time.
It's ridiculous.
And I'm sure there's people who are still doing this. And the beauty of the system of Wise is you don't have to do that anymore. That's like the most basic benefit. Another benefit I want to talk about too is there's actually VA healthcare available in some overseas countries. So it's usually where there's like a lot of vets. It's like the Philippines, for example, or in I believe there's VA healthcare available in the UK and Germany as well. I'm not sure about Japan. That would make sense to me, but I'm not entirely sure about that. There's not in New Zealand, right? So if I wanted to receive health, and this is actually something that's really tricky about, or at least it's been tricky for me. So if someone has a better solution, please reach out and let me know. But I don't know where my VA doctor is, right? Like, I don't know where my VA healthcare system is. I don't really care that much other than it would be nice just to kind of know. So if ever I'm back in the States, I can, if I need something, I have someone to call. But this came up recently because there was a condition that on my initial assessment, the rater said, oh, you should apply for this because we had a conversation about this and I think you would be eligible. So I applied for it and they tried scheduling me an appointment to see me about the condition. But they never, this is the classic VA, right? They just picked my mailing address is in Oregon. So they just picked a place in Oregon and were like, hey, you have an appointment in 2 weeks here. And I was like, oh, I can't make that. And they're like, okay, we'll cancel it. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, okay, you have an appointment in 2 weeks here in Oregon. I'm like, I'm not there though. Like, I don't live there. That's just my mailing address. I live overseas. They're like, oh, well, you need to update your address in va.gov. So I do that. And then they're like, okay, well, you're overseas, so we can't see you. And I was like, what? I don't understand how this works. So, and while we're on the topic, let me just make this clear that like the VA is, even though they have become so much better in the last couple of years, I wasn't there in the 80s, 90s, post-Vietnam, obviously. I can just speak as like a global war on terror GWAT vet. VA is pretty good now. They're doing a pretty good job. I think they're doing the best they can, but there's still processes where I'm like, why are you doing it this way? And how can you do it this way? But they do have a really good app now where you can track a lot of things. You can upload documents into. And the other thing I want to point people to is there are tons of VA chatbots and LLMs out there that will assist you with the process. The other thing you can do too is just use any of like the ChatGPTs, Claudes, any of these AI systems, and you can just say, as part of the prompt, you can say, hey, like before you give me any answers, you have to go reference the form on va.gov, right? And so you just kind of force it to actually like, so it doesn't just hallucinate and be like, oh yeah, you'll totally be good to do this. But I mean, you can upload your entire military medical record and have it scan it and say, like, what should I apply for? What do I have a good chance of being approved for? Hey, I've applied for this condition. Can you show me the exact page where the evidence of that injury or disability happened? And I think that these tools are really going to help vets make applications. A lot of times it was just too hard. Like, you got a 1,000-page military medical history. Who's got time to go through all that? I think that's one of the most recent improvements to this whole thing, is that there is help available and it's free. You just have to either use one of the chat bots that someone has developed specifically for VA benefits, but also be wary of those because they're probably trying to get you to use their humans that are going to charge you 3 months of whatever your upgrade is or whatever. And I do have a lot of questions about those kind of firms.
Spencer, you talked briefly about how you're using benefits overseas. So first question to follow up on that is, you were living in Hawaii when you separated, and then you moved straight to New Zealand. So that's the only places you've lived as a veteran, correct?
As a veteran, yes, I've lived in Hawaii and New Zealand. Yep.
Okay, great. So, and you were very clear about how the fact that you're enjoying the compensation there in New Zealand doesn't sound like there's much of a hiccup there. I'm curious, by the way, because I know some of the VA educational benefits are limited to the overseas as well. I went through that with a prospect. We looked at potential Chapter 35 benefits versus Chapter 33, and there's very different applications for overseas. That's a whole nother podcast, though.
I was just going to mention that, like for the GI Bill, there's a lot of overseas institutions that are registered with the VA as approved GI Bill schools. For instance, there's only like 5 universities in New Zealand. I'm pretty sure they're all, maybe 4 out of 5. Maybe there's one that's missing. But yeah, if you wanted to use your GI Bill benefits, you can use it overseas. And not only that, but you're gonna get a BAH as well. I think they have just like one BAH for all OCONUS with the GI Bill. But I think last time I checked, it was like $1,600 or $2,000. It was pretty good. So between that, and a lot of times actually, depending on what country you're in, there'll be like a student stipend as well. So wow. Because that, if you have citizenship or you have residency in a country, they want people to go to school. So like in New Zealand, for instance, I could use the GI Bill to, pay for a master's degree. I could get the BAH. And if that was my only source of income, I would probably be eligible for like a student allowance as well.
Wow. That's remarkable. So we're talking about combining benefits between what the military is providing and what even a host country could tack onto that. Yep. I did want to go back to kind of your specific, you mentioned the compensation, you're enjoying that. Doesn't sound like there's any hiccups with that. And then there's the healthcare, which it doesn't sound like you're pursuing any care based on the limitations overseas. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So at this time, I haven't used any really of my VA healthcare benefits. And this will be different for everybody. But, if you're living in Thailand or you're living in the Philippines, you can probably just pay Vietnam. You can probably just pay cash out of pocket.
Wow.
The healthcare systems in these countries are extremely affordable. We're talking about like $5 for a doctor's visit, $5 for medication, those kind of things. And in New Zealand, so we have a socialized healthcare system. So like if you have an emergency and you go to the ER, there's absolutely no charge whatsoever. Like yesterday, I wanted to go get a flu shot. There's a funded version. You have to meet certain criteria, like be a certain age or have certain conditions. I didn't meet those criteria, so I just paid out of pocket, and it was like 50 New Zealand dollars, which is like 30 US dollars, which is comparable to like what you would pay if you went to like CVS. If I go see a doctor here, it's about 30 US dollars copay. But then for prescriptions, as long as it's funded, which most prescriptions that you would get prescribed are, it's a $5 copay up to a maximum of $100 a year. So healthcare in New Zealand is very affordable, and emergency care especially, it's covered under a different scheme called the ACC, which is Accident Compensation Corporation, I think. It's even a different pot of money that you don't have to worry about. My wife and I actually choose in New Zealand to just pay for so on top of the public system, they have a private system as well. And compared, especially coming from the US, I was blown away by this. To opt into the private system currently, so we're in our late 30s, healthy couple, we pay less than $1,500 US dollars a year for private health insurance. What that allows us to do is skip the line, any public system. There's private hospitals and surgeries that we can access. We're covered on all these different care options. Whereas in the public system, it's like Canada, right? You have to wait in line for various operations or surgeries, if they're non-urgent. But you can opt into the private system, and it's so incredibly cheap. And, I don't know how all healthcare systems around the world work, but I imagine that in other countries as well that have very robust public systems, they usually also have a private system kind of attached to them. And because the public system is kind of shouldering the burden of the basic care, the private system can be extremely affordable.
if somebody is thinking about traveling overseas and thinking about maybe even moving overseas, and number one, they're not really experienced at that, and they're thinking about the permanence of staying overseas, like as a barrier to even getting started. Like they're not even going to get started because of it, right? There's that aspect of things. There's also the aspect of, can I even afford to live overseas? And then there's also the aspect of, will the overseas location that I decide to go, will it support me? And so I feel like you've had experiences in so many different countries with so many different systems, whether it's you personally or interacting with other people who have. Like, how would you approach this as somebody wanting to just get started with exploration?
Well, I mean, the first thing to do is go live there. Go rent an Airbnb. Yeah, just do it. And as a vacation or as a holiday, right?
Yeah.
So if you're in the privileged position where that is even an option for you, where you can say, "Hey, I want to," and let me back up though. As Americans, we have this misconstrued idea that we can just move to any country we want in the world and they will welcome us with open arms and we can live there forever. Let me introduce you to this little concept called borders and immigration. And just like in the United States, that we have a system where we say, you're welcome to live here if you abide by certain rules, or if you apply for certain programs, or if you're married to an American citizen, or if you have American citizen children. There's different pathways, right? And what's really interesting is, like in the EU, for example, the European Union, if you can prove Italian heritage, and that means, I think it's like a great-grandmother or great-grandfather. I mean, it's pretty far back. Any Italian...
like 23andMe? Like if I do a 23andMe blood test or something, I'm good?
I think a blood test, but plus you have to like be able to name the person.
Name somebody, okay.
Name somebody, name drop somebody. And you can pick up, you have to go through the process, and it probably behooves you to pay a lawyer, but you can pick up an Italian passport, right? Well, once you have a European Union passport, you can live anywhere in the European Union usually. And that just gives you a lot more flexibility. New Zealand, for example, we are notoriously have a closed border essentially. So you can come here on a tourist visa. You can live here for, I think, 9 months on a tourist visa. You could buy your way in. So right now, I think the price is $5 million. That can be a house. Previously, it had to be a business or an investment, but now you can just buy a $5 million New Zealand house, which is about $3 million US. Chump change. And the other pathways in, might be, so there's a U.S. Military veteran, Grumpus Maximus, who wrote The Golden Albatross about defined benefit pension cliffs. And he got into New Zealand by, I think he used his GI Bill. He went to school, so he got a student visa, and then he got a job and was able to pick up residency through that pathway. You have to play the game or else you risk being deported and not welcome back into the country that you've chosen. Now, for example, there are pathways in Germany where retired U.S. military can settle in Germany. But the main thing I would tell someone who's thinking about, hey, we want to move overseas or we want to try living overseas, it's like, well, first of all, just go to that country and live there for a month or two, get an Airbnb and try it, see how you like it. Because what I think a lot of people don't realize is if you move to a foreign country, especially if they don't speak English and you don't speak the local language, it can be quite difficult. Yeah, I mean, I moved to a English-speaking country. They claim they speak English. I have family here. I didn't really have any friends here, but it's taken me probably 3 or 4 years to build social networks, to figure out where my doctor is, to understand how to register my car. And there's still cultural differences that are difficult to navigate. And New Zealand is one of the easiest countries in terms of culture shock to move to. If you're thinking about moving to Spain or moving to Japan or moving to South Korea and you've never been to any of these places, like you should probably go live there for a little bit. And if you were stationed there and, as an active duty service member, and now you're thinking of living there as a veteran, it's going to be different, right? Like when you were there as an active duty service member, you had a job, you had a built-in social network because you had people that you worked with and people that you knew on the economy. And, you had a reason for being there. And So I think that was something that I would really encourage someone to do is, hey, before you just like pack up your life and move to a foreign country, first of all, figure out like, can you actually do that? And how are you gonna live there in terms of visa, in terms of residency? And then go there and see if you actually enjoy being there for a month or two. See if the lifestyle appeals to you. But yeah, I know plenty of veterans who, live in Vietnam, live in Thailand, live in the Philippines, live in New Zealand. But most of them have ended up here via family, via kids, via partners, spouses. There's usually a lot of people don't just pack up and move to another country without some kind of pull.
You've spoken a lot about the different places you've lived, and then I think you've officially talked about the challenges or the things you should consider before you move overseas, go visit, you've outlined kind of the challenges. Can you speak to the benefits of it, other than keeping your Kiwi wife happy to make, she's around her family, right? And like you said, if you have a spouse that wants to move overseas, what are some of the advantages, not just New Zealand, but of all the places you've been, and if you would consider living there as well, what are the benefits would be in your mind? Well, it could be financial or quality of life.
I think quality of life is the big one. This might get a little controversial, but the United States, as someone who's lived outside mainland United States for over 10 years now, whenever I go back to the mainland, I find that there is a lot of underlying anger and anxiety in the United States. And I think my theory is the root cause of that is that we don't really have a social safety net. We don't really trust our neighbors anymore. America's a very low trust society now, where you always have to be on your guard about like, what does this person want from me? And how am I going to prevent them from getting what they want from me, unless it also benefits me? And I think a lot of that actually has to do with tipping culture. So that could be a whole nother podcast. We can talk about that. But the underlying anxiety and anger and just this like feeling that things aren't quite right, I find to be very palpable when I go back to the mainland United States. And I say this as someone who's lived overseas now, because I lived in New Zealand, Hawaii, and then the Emirates before that. I don't find that to be true in other countries. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that in other countries, if you get into an accident, if you have some kind of health condition, you're going to receive treatment for it, and you're not going to get a multi-$100,000 invoice at the end of the day. And so I think that that's one of the big advantages to living overseas, especially if you have a pathway to residency or citizenship, where like if you've married a foreign spouse, or you have citizenship or residency pathways by ancestry. Once you're in like the local healthcare system, other than kind of like robotic surgeries and the most advanced drugs in the world for, let's say, like very rare cancers, the United States is not like there's this impression that Americans have that like we're all living with like dirt floors out here, and we don't have electricity, and we're practicing medicine from the 1890s, and it's just not true. Like,
Wait, what? That's not true?
Wait, hold on. We live in a Foxhole.
Hang on a second.
So no judgment.
So I think that's the one of the quality of life advantage is something that I really appreciate living overseas. I live in New Zealand, right? So it is different than someone who might live in Japan, might live in South Korea, might live in Germany. The language here is very easy. As soon as I open my mouth, everybody knows I'm an American, but there's no kind of anti-American sentiment that I encounter on a day-to-day basis. Actually, sometimes they think I'm Canadian, which is nice. I would say that the other quality of life aspect that is different than the United States, besides like the healthcare system and just kind of the social support systems that allow people to just relax and just to like be a little bit more kind and gracious with each other. And at least in New Zealand, I would say that the quality of life aspect I like the most is that there's like a lack of hustle culture. They might be trying to like better their lives, but they're also like recognizing that like their time is finite. I think one of the prime examples of this is most people, like walk with their kids to school because the school is like in the middle of the neighborhood and people live around it. And so like every morning when I'm going to the gym at 8:30 or whatever, I see, families and groups of kids walking to the school barefoot. And I think that the barefoot thing is interesting to me because it's not that they can't afford shoes. It's that the country is so safe and the streets and sidewalks are so clean that there's no concern that like they're going to step on a needle or they're going to step on broken glass and so I think that right there is one of those things where it's like, oh wow, like they're clearly doing something right with their society here where parents feel safe to allow their children to walk to school barefoot. That's a common thing in New Zealand, and I don't know how common it is in other countries, but at least living in New Zealand, and maybe that's unique to New Zealand, but I think that would be a very rare, city or town to find in America where kids still walk to school barefoot.
Spencer, I love your perspective on this. I've said, especially as I've traveled around, deployed, whatever, that I often wished many Americans would get outside the borders of our own country to see how other people live.
Yes.
And just getting that experience itself, however you think about it, maybe you get to that other country and you say, yeah, this is not for me. I'm going to head back to the States and I'm going to do my thing. But getting the experience of other cultures and how they live is it's incredible. I think it just goes a long way to help shape the way that you interact with other people, speak with other people with an appreciation for what others may or may not have in other countries. So I appreciate your perspective on that. I think we're going to have to wrap things up. I would love this conversation to keep going. We're going to have a part due for sure, have you back down here in the Foxhole, but we have a trivia question to get to. So it's trivia time.
All right, let's do it.
So here's how this works. Rob has been sitting here quietly, and he's going to have to sit here quietly some more.
Yeah, I can text him directly. It doesn't have to be visual cues. And also, I don't know the right answer, so it won't help either. Yeah.
The way that this usually works is the guest on the show gets to answer for somebody. You get to answer for Rob today.
Excellent.
If you haven't heard our trivia question before, we usually try to make it as difficult as possible. And at the end of the year, we're going to have a contest for the 8 people that listen to our show to win some kind of prize for how many questions I got right and how many questions Rob got wrong.
Nice.
So, with this, are you ready for the trivia questions? You get 4 multiple choice here.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. The Chase Sapphire Reserve and the Amex Platinum both charge annual fees over $500. Which of the following statements is most accurate about how to evaluate whether a premium travel card is actually worth it? A, the true value depends on whether you'll actually use the card's benefits. Most card holders only redeem a fraction of available credits. B, if you travel more than twice a year, the points alone will always offset the fee. C, the effective annual fee is calculated by subtracting only the travel credits from the stated fee. And D, premium cards are only worth it if you can hit the minimum spend bonus in the first 90 days.
I feel like this is pulled from my website.
The AI he used probably referenced your website. I'm sure I looked at it.
It probably did.
Yeah, I was like, hang on, I recognize that language. I thought you were going to ask me what the annual fees were, but oh gosh. Can you read A again? I think it's A.
Yeah, the true value depends on whether you'll actually use the card benefits. Most card holders only redeem a fraction of available credits.
Yeah, let's go with A.
Man, so confident. Well, Rob, you'll be happy to know he got you the right answer.
I knew it. Yeah, that was more of a softball than I thought. When you read it, I was like, well, first of all, I love that you brought up the travel card points because I think our next time with Spencer, you and Jamie, I know you guys are a wealth of knowledge when it comes to credit card points. So that's what I want to hear about maybe next time. But so when you led with that, oh man, that was very generous of you. You know what, Spencer, the other thing, our last guest actually initially answered it correctly, but Ullman allowed himself to talk him out of the correct answer. So like if the correct answer was B, and then Ullman stood there, like he just kept quiet. It allowed him to work his way out of the, I'm like, you jerk. Like, so.
He was a lawyer. What do you expect?
Yeah. Right. He's a lawyer. Yeah. Like Regis Philbin, man, are you sure?
Are
You don't want to change your
sure?
answer.
pretty much what
You
he
don't
did.
wanna-
$1
you don't-
million.
You don't want
Well,
to phone
thank-
a friend.
Thank you, Spencer, for that. I appreciate the point. Thanks, buddy.
As we wrap things up here, Spencer, we want to give you one chance really to tell everybody where they can find you and where's the best place to get a hold of you.
MilitaryMoneyManual.com is the hub for everything. I do want to highlight we're launching a community app very soon. Probably by the time this episode drops, we'll be in beta testing. So if you're interested in that, follow us on Instagram at Military Money Manual. It's going to be personal finance, investing. It's going to be a community app for the military money community. So if you're interested in anything military money, investing, TSP, credit cards, there's going to be courses inside there. So it's going to be, I'm really excited about what we're doing with the app. It's also going to be available in the Apple and Google stores. So just Google military or search Military Money Manual. I've got a book that I wrote. I mentioned it in the intro. And I'm very excited that we got to sponsor the class of 2026 at West Point, the U.S. Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, and the Coast Guard Academy in Connecticut. Every graduate from those academies got a copy of the book this year. So thanks
That's
to
incredible.
my team at Otterpine, especially Saya. Thank you so much for making that all happen. And Madison, my amazing social media maestro, for enabling all that to happen. If you know somebody at the U.S. Naval Academy or the Merchant Marine Academy, I'd love to get them a copy of the book in 2027 as well, and we can hit all 5 service academies. But you can get that on Amazon or my website, shop.militarymoneymanual.com.
So, Spencer, again, thank you very much for joining us in the Foxhole today. It was a little bit cozy in here today, but I do think I hear a helicopter coming in overhead, and it is time for you to take off out of here.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Military Money Manual podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
The views and opinions presented here are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views of the DoD or its components. Reference to any commercial products or services does not constitute DoD endorsement of those products or services.